This morning, speaker, best-selling author, life strategist, our really good friend, Michael McGill Jr. joins us live.
Well, he's back. Michael McGill is here. He's a life coach, speaker, and author of Soul Vitamins. We love him.
Michael McGill Jr.
Yeah, it's been great having you on.
It's been fun.
Yes.
How do you show up? Every single day, you get a choice. Every time you speak, you're making a choice. Every time you don't speak, you're making a choice. Every time you affirm and lift higher, you're making a choice. Every time you discourage and bring someone lower, you are making a choice. Every time you show love and grace and gratitude, you're making a choice. Every time you discourage and disempower and disavow and disvalue, you're making a choice. I really want you to reflect on it, because that's the epitome from what my talk is today, is the power of connection. The power of building community, the power of shifting the climate and culture in your spaces, developing a climate and culture that liberates, that empowers, that exalts. But it starts with every single choice that you make. It starts with every single thought that we think. It starts with every single word that we speak. How do you show up? How did you show up today? Every once in a while, when I was ready to give up the fight, every once in a while, when it became too hard, the burden became too hard to bear, every once in a while, when I've been working with couples and families on helping them increase their connection and they don't get it, every once in a while, when I think about the young people who I just want to help them expand their capacity, grow their neurons, grow their new neurological networks, I get reminded of this quote, and then I remember there is no type of plantation, there is no type of garden where you get to plant the seed and harvest the seed in the same season. What that tells me, well, amen to that, or yes, yes, or whatever you say. Someone say yes, yes. Someone say amen. Someone say holla, because it's the truth. Often we get discouraged when we don't see the manifestation of the work that we do, and why would we not? See, if you're anything like me, you are a seed planter. I get to go to these conferences and these talks, and I do this mostly with educators and corporations regularly around the year. I get to go on television and plant seeds, but rarely do I see the fruit of the seed, and sometimes, if I'm gonna be honest, I get discouraged. I get discouraged because I don't see the manifestation of the work that I've done. But if I've learned anything over my little years of living, because I know I look 12, joking, but if I've learned anything over these years, I've learned that the seed can blossom and be watered 10 years from now, 10 days from now, 20 years from now, 15 seconds from now. You don't know. All you know is that you have the power to plant the seed. Will you remember that when you walk into your classroom on the first day? Will you remember that when you as an administrator walk into the building and you're in the hallway seeing someone who doesn't want to go to class? Will you plant the seed? Will you plant the seed as a district official to those whom you lead? Will you encourage and empower, or will you discourage and empower? Will you plant a seed? Will you plant a seed to a colleague who has the capacity to reach higher and be greater? Will you plant a seed? Will you plant a seed? Because what I know to be true is this: every single person that we interact with, every single colleague that we connect with, every single body, every single soul that we see has three irreducible needs, no matter their gender, no matter their orientation, no matter their economic status, no matter their trauma. Every single person you meet has three irreducible needs, three needs that must be met for them to flourish and thrive in this world. It was my story with the young person who I call Prince. I call him Prince because there was one day when I was growing up that I didn't realize my Prince-like ability. I didn't realize my Prince-like capacity. And so I began to get that lesson from someone in me, and then I began to learn how to pass it down to someone like him. And in learning about Prince, I realized he was a booger. Oh, he was a booger. Now that was funny, but he really was a booger. And so in dealing with Prince, he was one who had been suspended, I think at least 20 times in the 6th grade. I don't even know how that's possible. 20 times. 20 times in the 6th grade, had multiple tardies, multiple issues. He had been written off by multiple people. I'd even remember one administrator saying, oh, that's so-and-so, he ain't gonna make it. And we've heard those conversations. We know we've been a part of those conversations, and we know, in fact, we may have even been the culprit of those conversations, but today we get to plant a new seed. Years ago, Kaiser Permanente participated in a study, and in this study it was primarily designed for physicians, primary care physicians, because they were seeing multiple patients, and in seeing these patients, they couldn't realize how some of them had inexplainable physical issues, physical challenges. And they wanted to really unpack, where did you get the pathology, the patterns for these challenges? They wanted to really do some research, some unpacking, some insight. And so they developed a study, Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. And it evaluates and unpacks 10 questions, which I think really, as a person who's now in that field, is not really good enough, because some of the questions don't go deep enough to talk about the trauma that we bury. There's a textbook that we learn from, and it's essentially called The Body Bears the Burden. The body bears the burden of the mind. The seeds that have been implanted and impregnated in the mind show up in the body. Those who had a higher score on the trajectory were more likely to experience things like depression, were more likely to experience mental disorders and personality disorders, were more likely to experience behavioral disorders, conduct disorders, were more likely to experience cardiac disorders, we're more likely to experience stroke. We're more likely to experience suicide. We're more likely to become smokers. We're more likely to become heavy drinkers and alcoholics. Someone say it's in the DNA. But oh, it can be changed. As people in this field, we can do things to help young people really reprogram what we call their neurological networks. As I did this study, I couldn't believe it, but that was me. The number 8 out of 10. I had experienced not feeling safe. I had experienced being sexually abused by a female cousin. I had experienced a parent going in and out of jail. I had experienced another parent abandoning me as a father. I had experienced so many issues through the trajectory of my childhood. And I realized growing up the impact that had on my psyche, on my social, my emotional development. But it was people in my life who planted a seed, who saw my purpose and my promise and my potential. It was educators who spoke life into me every time they saw me, because they saw the capacity from which I could be, from where I was to which I could be. That's the power of human connection. Know who you are as an educator. Know your story, because you cannot fix and heal what you don't acknowledge and deal with. And sometimes we carry our own traumas that cause us to traumatize other people. We carry our own traumas that cause us to really be shut out and shut down from the traumas of other people. We bring in our own baggage. We bring in our own issues. And because we as educators don't deal with them or don't understand them, it causes us not to be able to plant the most seeds in the garden. The brain stem, or the reptilian brain, the animal brain, the part of the brain where you are in fight or flight mode, the part of the brain where you don't always make those critical decision-making skills. Sometimes for those who've experienced trauma, that's where it's most alert. But how do you see them? There is a such thing that we call a biopsychosocial model. Someone say I love this word, biopsychosocial. Someone say it again, biopsychosocial.
It was a pleasure to hear Mr. McGill speak today. His conversation was so inspirational because it combines two very important aspects of teaching. Not only the science of teaching, but the importance of building relationships and really using your heart. Because so many times people enter education with their heart, but don't really think about the science and the importance of using those facts to combine those two to really reach and engage children.
It gives us insight and awareness on how people show up every single day. And so often we discount people because of their behavior. We are quick to tell somebody to get over something when we are privileged not to go through it. I'm gonna say that again. We can be so quick to tell someone to get over something when we have been privileged not to go through it. And privilege is a hard word that many of us don't like to hear. So before you shut down, I ask you to get curious. Get curious of what that word means, because we all have privileges. If you are a woman, you have the privilege of having lower car insurance more often than not. Why? They say women don't drive as fast, but I don't think that's true. The people who cut me off more often than not are women. If you are a man, you have privilege. This world we live in is dominated by male points of view. The world we live in is governed by mostly men. The corporate boards are governed by men. That's a reality check, and understand your male privilege, the trajectory and the power of expectations. What we noticed from that research was the reason why one set of rats did well and the other didn't do so well was because of how they were treated and cared for and handled by the researchers. As we think about the power of relationships, they are the key to building someone's emotional capacity. They are the key to shifting the narrative. People often ask, how do you help someone who's experienced trauma? And of course we know psychotherapy works, but therapy alone doesn't always do the work. What does the work? Our relationships. Those who need the most love and connection and communion will ask for it in the most unloving ways. But how will you show up? You are some powerful people in this room. Will you own your power? Will you acknowledge your power? Will you talk about your power? By planting seeds. The power of your seed. The power of your seed. The power of your seed.
And thank you for having the courage to say everything that people are afraid to say. Very affirming. Very affirming.
Yes.
And a lot of times we stand up for social justice, and we are the people having a hard conversation. And it's just good to know that it's okay to have those conversations.
Yes.
And be okay with the discomfort. Find comfort in the discomfort.
Yes,
because
that part.
That's the only way we're going to impact change.
And that's the only way that we grow.
Yes.
And I just want to say that I experienced one of the most awesome keynote speakers that I've ever heard, I think, in my life, Mr. McGill. And one of the things that I will definitely always remember over and over again is that relationships are very, very important, and that it's about the whole child. You have to know the kid's story. Every child comes with a story, and we must know that. And Mr. McGill put that out there very clearly and very plainly. I'm just so excited and elated about this conference, mainly because of what I've just heard. Out of all the things that are going on right now, the keynote speaker was the most wonderful person and speaker that we have heard. It is about the children.